Hello and welcome to the Support After Abortion training. I am so grateful to be with you today. My name is Lisa Rowe, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the CEO for Support After Abortion. Our mission is to end the demand for abortion by helping men and women who have been impacted by abortion. We do that through helping people understand what it is to walk with compassion, growing collaboration among leaders, and ultimately building capacity all over the world so that men and women needing help after abortion can find it. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to have a conversation with someone who's experienced an abortion, what it looks like on the sidewalk, maybe a friend, a family member. We're going to talk about some of the things that you may struggle with when thinking about abortion and the things that might be impacting you from being more of an influence in this realm. We really, really believe that in order to end the demand for abortion, we've got to start the conversation. So I'm grateful you're with me today. And I hope that this presentation helps you to start the conversation. So how is this presentation laid out? We're going to talk about the scope of abortion, the impacts that abortion has made over the last 50 years. Then we're going to move into similarities between you and me, similarities that create space for us to see people who've experienced abortion similar to ourselves. We all struggle on this journey of life. Then we're going to talk about how simple it really is to have this conversation and how we create in our own minds, and because of the stereotypes and the cultures, more larger issues around abortion than needs to be. And I'm going to give you a simple process on how to have those discussions. And then finally, we'll end with some very real scenarios of things that I've encountered personally. And we'll really talk about what it looks like to do this and to do it well. So let's get started. Let's talk about the scope. So we know 1 in 4 women will have an abortion by their 45th birthday. We also know that those women have partners, and those partners are impacted by abortion too. So add to that 1 in 4 women, add 1 in 4 men also experience abortion by their 45th birthday. That's a huge number. 25% of our childbearing population is experiencing abortion. That means these women and men are in our families. They may be us. They are in our communities. They're working with us. They're in our classrooms. They're all around us. Abortion has become a very normal or normalized experience for many people. And we'll talk more about that as we continue. A big statistic that seems shocking to a lot of people is out of the almost 1 million abortions that happen every year, 50% of those abortions are repeat abortions. So what does that mean? That means that 500,000 new abortions, new men and women are impacted every year. But that also means that 500,000 people walking in our abortion clinics every year have already had 1 or more abortions. That is huge. And it's huge as we think about ending the demand for abortion. Why? Because if we know that men and women are walking in the clinics, half of them every year, who've already experienced abortion, the pain of abortion, we know we need to start talking to them. We know we need to elevate the message of healing because, like you and like me, if we've experienced painful situations and then had healing as a result, we're not likely going to repeat it. But if we don't find healing, we will repeat it. Similar to the divorce rate, we know that 1 in every 2 families, similar to this statistic, will fall victim to divorce. We know that that statistic only grows in 2nd and 3rd marriages. It's very similar here. Once it becomes normalized, it continues to be repeated. And so what we want you to hear today is that as someone who cares about the pro-life movement, as someone who wants to end abortion, we've got to start talking to the man and woman who've experienced abortion. Another really real fact is that abortion has been legalized for nearly 50 years. What does that mean? That means there are 4 generations living on Earth today who've experienced abortion. That means we have great grandmothers, grandmothers, mothers, and now great grandchildren who've experienced abortion. That is hugely significant. And as we talk about how similar we are and how much of a mental health abortion and abortion healing are, how much of a mental health issue it is, we're going to really learn why it's important that we understand this. Because as I mentioned in the last slide, our experience with trauma only repeats itself until we find healing. This is a pretty profound statistic as well. 22 million people, based on the consumer research that Support After Abortion conducted, would go get help right now if they knew where to find it. Imagine that. There are 22 million people, plus many others, who've experienced abortion, but 22 million of them right now, if they knew where to find help, they would go get it. The problem is we've had abortion healing as the 10th thing on our list. And because abortion is stigmatized and polarized and overly spiritualized, we haven't had the option to say, we have help for you in a very real way. Those 22 million people don't know where to go, as I mentioned. 90% of them, that means only 1 out of every 10 people say, I know a healing ministry that helps. I know a support group. I know the therapist to go to. The rest of those folks, the rest of the 90% are left wondering, is there help for me? I think of a client that I had at one time, and she said to me, abortion is socially acceptable, but nobody's talking about it. And it's my belief that that's why it's so hard for people to know where to go. You know, abortion has all of these polarizing, stigmatized, like I said, issues in our culture and in our world. And so people don't have conversations like they have with other mental health issues. We are hearing all about suicide awareness, domestic violence awareness, sex trafficking awareness, sexual abuse awareness. There's divorce help, and there's homelessness support, and you name it, the list goes on. But if you really stop and think about abortion, who's talking about it? Who's bringing awareness? Who's helping people know that there's support for them? It's not happening. And the reality is, it's actually opposite. People are afraid to say, I've had an abortion. People feel like if they say the word abortion, that they'll automatically be ostracized to the right or to the left. We hear people talk about, you're a murderer. You should be in prison for the rest of your life. So my encouragement today through sharing these statistics with you is for you to truly understand how significant abortion is in our culture and how much work we have to do in order to help those who are hurting so that we can stop this generational pattern of behavior and let people know there's help so they stop repeating it. As we move into the next area of the presentation, I want to pause with you. I want you to reflect on the statistics that I just provided, the prevalence. Maybe somebody that you know has already come to mind. Maybe somebody that you think might have experienced abortion. Maybe there was an incident where maybe you didn't understand how prevalent, how significant abortion was, and you didn't show up with a lot of compassion. That's okay. We don't know any different in this world. And it might only be right now that you are learning a different way. And for that, I am so grateful. Because this next area we're going to go to is to talk about how similar we really are. We are more similar to one another than we are different. And just because somebody chooses abortion doesn't make them any less valuable, any more damaged than somebody who's experienced bullying, than somebody who's experienced childhood poverty, than somebody who's experienced the loss of a family member early on, that somebody who's experienced egregious abuse. We are more alike than we are different, and here's why. Look at this list of words. These are things that our consumer research has shown us that people feel after abortion: depression, regret, guilt, PTSD, disconnection, sadness, grief, emotional withdrawal, abandonment, anxiety, anger. Think about those words. And I want you to think for a moment, when's the last time you felt like that? When's the last time one of these words penetrated your heart and your mind? You felt these things, maybe not as it relates to abortion, but as it relates to the own pain, your own pain that you've walked through. You are more alike than you are different from someone who's experienced abortion. And I want you to feel empowered today to start drawing those correlations so that those conversations with men and women who've had abortion don't feel so distant anymore. Here's what we know about abortion. Abortion is generational. We know that people who have family members who have had abortions are more likely to repeat those experiences. Much like other traumas, we repeat what is familiar. So as I share about what abortion is and what we know about abortion, I want you to parallel this to your own experiences. We repeat what is familiar. For me, I watched my parents get divorced in 4th grade, ugly custody battle. And without healing, I entered my first marriage and found myself considering divorce and ultimately walking through that journey. It was normal for me. It was what I saw. And until I started a healing journey after that, did I really understand that nobody taught me how to do hard things in marriage. So I repeated what was familiar. I repeated what I saw in my childhood. That is no different for men and women who've experienced abortion. Many men will tell us, I didn't have a dad, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be a good one. I don't want to bring a child into this world if I can't be a good dad because I didn't have one. Now, we know that's a false belief system, but that's where that man is in that moment. And so what does he do? He encourages his girlfriend, his wife, to have an abortion. Or the woman who says, I can't do this alone. My mom struggled her entire life raising us. She worked 4 jobs to put food on the table. I had to raise my brothers and sisters. I don't want to do that to my child. I'm not ready. So what happens? She repeats what her mom did and her mom's mom did. Trauma is trauma. So we repeat what is familiar. We repeat what is learned. And sometimes we repeat it as that 50% repeat abortion number to gain control over it. Maybe the first time you didn't feel like you had control of your abortion experience because it was your boyfriend who encouraged you, your mom who encouraged you, society. So the second time when you find yourself unexpectedly pregnant, you go, you know what? I'm going to do this because I want it this time. We do that a lot. We do that in relationships. We do that when we're in certain really crazy situations. We want to grow and feel empowered over things. And so if we didn't have power over it the first time, we maybe repeat it to get power over it. And underlying all of this, which I believe I can relate to and you can relate to, is there is a lack of identity, value, and purpose. Many, 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 many of the women I speak to who have had abortions have sexual abuse at the core. What do you think sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse, does to a young girl? It steals her identity, her value, and her purpose. So what happens over time as she grows? She continues to see the world through those broken lenses. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who she's created to be. And she certainly doesn't know that there's any value to her life. And so she begins on a journey of getting into more and more and more vulnerable situations. We can relate to that. We all struggle at one point or another. We all face trials that challenge our identity, challenge our value system, challenge if we have purpose in this world. We are more alike than we are different. I think this quote from C.S. Lewis is amazing, and it really brings to perspective for me how abortion hurts people, how trauma hurts people, and how it's really difficult to see it, and how sometimes we can put a mask on and people really don't understand that we're hurting. This may be relative to experience you had where a woman says, I chose abortion and I wanted it. And that may be the space that she has to believe, but it's my experience that I haven't met a woman that really felt that way, where she was untouched by her abortion experience. Let me read this and then I'll draw a parallel for you. Mental pain is less dramatic than physical pain. Think about that. So if you see a man or a woman in a wheelchair coming home from war, that's dramatic, isn't it? With maybe a bandage on their head and in their wheelchair and bruises everywhere. It's more dramatic to see that, right? But listen to this, but it's more common. Mental pain is more common and also harder to bear. Because what meets the eye is what we perceive. It's what we take in. So that man coming home from war with a bandage on his head and 2 legs that are blown off and in a wheelchair, because we can see it, we believe it. But mental pain is more difficult to see. But what he's saying here is that it's more common. We're more alike than we are different. And it's very difficult to bear. I think that's really important for us to understand as we think about abortion, as we think about the conversations we will have. We're not always going to be able to see the pain. We're not always going to realize the pain. But it's there, and I want you to know that it's there. So now that we understand the scope, we understand the prevalence of abortion, we understand that we are more alike, and maybe now your guard's starting to fall. Maybe now you're starting to realize, wow, maybe I can have a conversation about this that's outside of the political or religious realm. Maybe I really can have a human-to-human conversation because I can relate at some level, because when I was a child, I was in foster care and I felt abandoned. And maybe at some level, that person who's experienced abortion has felt the very same way. And I can see them as a human being first, outside of what the culture is saying about abortion. And although I haven't experienced abortion myself, I am a human just like them, and I can walk with compassion. So I want to give you a couple simple thoughts as you move into this new belief system, this new way of being. I want to give you the tools to start the conversation. It really is simple. So I want you to look at these 2 pictures. We have a picture of a gentleman praying, asking if he could help. And then underneath that, what appears to be a woman who's sad, underneath a sign that says, "Face it, abortion kills a person." Now I want to do 2 things here. I want to differentiate between people who ask, well, shouldn't we name abortion murder? Isn't that what it is? I'm not arguing against that. What I want you to think about is your audience and who you are positioned to help in all of the moments that you have. Are you positioned to help people understand the significance of abortion? Or are you in a position to help somebody who may have experienced abortion? 2 different approaches. So let's talk about condemnation first, which is the message that I hear most often. I'll tell you, in preparation for one of my presentations, I researched compassion in abortion and condemnation in abortion. And here's the scary thing. When I researched condemnation in abortion, it was pro-life messaging and the movement that popped up. When I researched compassion and abortion, you know who popped up most? Planned Parenthood. There's something really wrong with that. We have got to get better as a pro-life movement and understand that compassion is where we need to lead, especially with 50% of the abortions every year being on repeat abortion experiences. So let's talk about condemnation. What does it look like? It's often the kill message, we call it, or the murder message. It's the person out in front of the abortion clinic holding up the sign that says, "You are a murderer, you're going to hell. Abortion is sin." It's the person who starts an argument and says, you're wrong, pro-life is better, and you don't understand. And I get it, there's apologetics. I want you to remember your audience. And we are talking about the man and woman who's experienced abortion right now. Our audience is to speak to them for this presentation. That message, that condemnation message, only pushes that man or woman who's experienced abortion further and further away. Remember, let's go back to that 90%. That is why 90% of those impacted by abortion do not know where to go for help, because our message has been condemning in nature. And so people have pushed away. Let's talk about what it is to be compassionate in this moment. Let's say somebody comes up to you and has experienced abortion and shares for the very first time that they've experienced abortion and that they don't know where else to go for help. I would offer a very, very simple one-sentence response. I am so very sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do to support you? Wow. Like that person in that moment just goes, you're validating that it was a loss and you actually want to help me. Everybody up until this point has been unwilling to help me or wants to tell me that it's wrong. Really? And maybe that's why I'm feeling so sad, because it really was a loss. You know, our culture sends lots of messages to men and women who've experienced abortion. It's a clump of cells. It's not a baby until 8 weeks. It's not, you guys know what those stories are. And so oftentimes men and women who experience abortion have a really hard time really understanding why they're feeling pain afterwards, because many of them don't know that it was their baby that they killed. Many of them don't understand the whole picture going into an abortion experience. One simple sentence. I'm so sorry for your loss. And then ask what you can do to support them. Take a peek at this picture. I show this picture often because this is from 2018, very recent. Many people would see this picture and go, yeah, awesome. I wish we had people out in front of our abortion clinic that would do stuff like this. That's a lot of people together to help save lives. Again, I want you to remember your audience. This is outside of an abortion clinic. Women are walking in, men are walking in, women are walking out, men are walking out. If you look at the gentleman with his blue shirt on, it says, I vote pro-life. With your hat on and your compassionate understanding now, a woman who's just experienced abortion, is she going to approach the pro-life movement and think they're compassionate? Think about it. Some of you might say, well, we want to stop her before she goes in. Absolutely. Is this sign going to stop her? Is this sign going to invite her into a conversation with you where you might be able to change her mind, help her make a different decision? No. So are we being supportive or shameful? And I want you to evaluate how you are showing up. Many of you have probably not even thought about this up until this point, and that is totally normal. Our culture has said, this is the way to stop things. This is the way to end abortion, shame people, and push the kill message. We have to be honest about what abortion is. Absolutely correct. One thing is missing, and that's evaluating the audience. If you're in front of legislators, if you're in front of people that are decision makers, absolutely you want to use words like that. But if you are in front of men and women who've experienced abortion, and that is your audience, it is time for us to show up with a more supportive message. And that supportive message is not saying, I agree with your decision, but it's saying, I understand that healing is the most powerful tool for you. And if I show up shaming you, there's no way you're going to listen to me. There's no way that you're going to hear that there's support for you. Take a moment. Read some of these pro-life messages that we have received on our social media platforms. The left side is from a live action video blog that went viral. And on the right side are some of the responses we got when we were advertising one of our virtual conferences. Look at the words that were used. Kill their babies. They're not responsible. Spread their legs. They won't support the child in regards to the father. They're on welfare. Liberal. Murder. Right? Evil. Go to jail. How in the world a woman scrolling through her feed looks for abortion healing or abortion support, and this is what comes up in all the pro-life feed? How is a woman or a man going to feel like they can reach out for support when this is the conversations that we're having out loud? And guys, this is happening way more frequent than I ever want to admit. We have a social media team that has to discern and filter these messages every single day. And I want you to think again about the audience. The audience here was hopefully attracting a woman to a video blog where she could hear another woman's story of abortion healing and how her story might connect to this particular woman's story and how then she could find help. But underneath that video blog was all of this feed. Or the virtual conference where men and women were invited to learn more about what it is to find healing after abortion. And this was in the feed. Maybe some of you are feeling challenged right now. And for that, I'm really grateful. We've got to really filter our understanding, the messages that we are sharing, who our audience is. 1 in 4 women and men will experience abortion by the age of 45. 50% of our annual abortion rate is on men and women who've already experienced abortion. How in the world are we going to invite them into healing and really truly stop generational patterns of behavior if we don't start speaking to the men and women who've experienced abortion? So here's something I like to point out. This is the process of change. 12-step models use this. This is actually their tool that I've adapted here for us. I want you to just think of this in terms of yourself, but also the man or woman who's experienced abortion. We need awareness to move into acceptance, to ultimately create an action step, a change. So let me give you an example. A man or woman who's experienced abortion, using substances to cope afterwards, finds himself in one relationship after another, nothing is satisfying, drops out of school, and is super depressed. They don't have any awareness that their life up until that point is causing them to make these decisions, that their abortion has propelled them into another layer of destruction, another layer of vulnerability. And you have the opportunity in this moment, by showing up with compassion, to create a level of awareness, to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do to support you? In that moment, there's an opportunity to create awareness for that person to embrace what you said and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that my decisions up until this point were a result of my abortion experience, were a result of things that happened to me as a child. And then they can move into this acceptance place. I had an abortion because I was sexually abused as a child, and I didn't know there was a different way. I lost all identity. I lost my voice. I lost every bit of value I had. I can't believe I created another ugly situation that would follow me for the rest of my life. But I see how it happened, and I don't want to let that happen again. So I'm going to start to go to therapy. I'm going to start to engage in this group. I'm going to start whatever, fill in the blank. That's how change happens. Now let's go to that condemnation message. You're a murderer. You're a sinner. You don't deserve to be alive. Well, that just pushes someone even further back into, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. I don't deserve to have any kind of freedom. So they never even get to walk or step in or be invited into a process of change. This may go for you too. The same model applies to you. Maybe today you're feeling challenged by what I'm sharing. Maybe you're going, holy cow, I had no idea that abortion was so prevalent. I had no idea the generational impacts. I had no idea that abortion was a result of childhood trauma. I had no idea. So today you have an opportunity to say, you know what? I didn't have the training. I didn't know. I assumed. I was a victim of my culture. And today I want to be different. Today, I see how important it is to embrace that man or woman who's experienced abortion, not because I like their choice, not because I would make that same choice, not because I value their choice, but because I value them as a human being. And I believe they deserve the same freedom I'm walking in. And today, you get to take an action step. You get to show up more bold and courageous than you ever have, with compassion in your heart and mind. You now get to see students on your campus. You now get to see men and women on the sidewalk. You now get to see people in your family or in your workplace or everywhere else in a different light. You get to see them with a level of compassion and empathy that you hadn't had before. And ultimately, what that does is it gives them the gift to go find the help that they need. It gives them the opportunity to see the abortion healing movement separate from the movement they've always witnessed, the condemning movement. It gives them an opportunity to say yes to a newfound freedom, to ultimately finding themselves, their identity, their value, and their purpose. But it starts with you. It starts with a conversation. And if we aren't having these conversations, Planned Parenthood is. So you are equipped. We help you get equipped. We have little business-sized cards with our information on them. We have a hope line. We answer that hope line with people who've experienced abortion. We answer it with confidence, with compassion, confidentiality. People can remain anonymous if they want to. They can text. They can get to us through social media. We want to start that conversation. We want to make sure people know there is support after abortion and that they don't have to journey alone. We also have pamphlets called Keys to Hope and Healing. They're in Spanish. There's a couple booklets for men, several booklets for women. These are amazing resources to also help start the conversation. It can be done in a group, it can be done individually, but it's a great tool to help navigate conversations around abortion. And it really allows you to now be an ambassador. You don't have to know everything. We do. We get to be the experts in abortion healing, but we need your help to start the conversation. And here are some of the tools that you can use. Go to our social media. On our website, we have blogs and podcasts and all sorts of resources available to you so that you can get further equipped. Maybe you work in a jail ministry. Maybe you're a therapist. Maybe you have patients in your gynecological office that need to know their support and you haven't been able to broach the conversation, but you witness their tears. You witness their fears. You watch them struggle with infertility after their abortion experiences, and you haven't known where to send them. Well, now you do. And we are waiting for their phone call. We are waiting to support you. We are waiting to start this conversation so that we can truly end the demand for abortion. So now we're going to apply everything we've learned. We've talked about the scope, how prevalent abortion is. We've talked about how important it is for us to see ourselves not very different than the man and woman who's experienced abortion. And then we just talked about simple process by which you can have a conversation with a man or woman who's experienced abortion. One simple sentence, I'm so sorry for your loss. And then even saying further, how can I help you? So let's look at several scenarios that might apply to you. Maybe you're a sidewalk counselor. So on the sidewalk, you notice a woman get out of a car with tears in her eyes. She appears very confused. She's getting ready to go inside the abortion clinic. What would you say to her? What are you trained to say? Are you trained to show up with compassion in your heart? How can I help you? Would you mind talking to me for a moment? I have some resources for you. Would you be interested in listening? It looks like you're upset. Is there anything I can do to help? Or maybe this isn't you, but you've witnessed people who, don't go in there. That doctor's a murderer. Baby killer inside this building. These are things that I've heard. I'm praying for your soul. You're going to hell. I want you to really think about that. Because here's the next scenario that really plays a role. The same woman who ignored you when you tried to help her prior to entering the clinic, now she is even more upset and is doing everything she can do to avoid you on her way to the car. What do you do now? How did you show up when she first got to the clinic? Clearly upset, crying. And she went in anyways, which sometimes happens. And now she has you on the back end of this. Do you dismiss her altogether? Or do you think of the number of repeat abortions and the generational impact that abortion has on families? And do you enter into the same conversation with her? Gosh, you look really upset. Is there anything I can do to help? I'm so sorry you're walking through this. Here's a resource for you, and you hand her our business card. I know today might have been a really hard day for you, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Here's the card. If you ever need help, they're there for you. But what if you showed up with that condemning message on the front side of it? Do you think she's going to want to hear you on the back side of it? Absolutely not. So the way we show up on the front end needs to be the way we show up on the back end. And Sidewalk Advocates for Life is very, very good with their training, how to have compassion on the sidewalk. You know, Laura Mazuka tells us all the time, like, we present with the material to help them not go into that clinic, to help them avoid the abortion experience. But if they come out and they've had an abortion, we provide them with the support they need afterwards. Think about that. It's really important that we know our audience, isn't it? Third scenario. This is for somebody, maybe a student for life fellow. While at school, a young man comes to your booth and says he doesn't know why, but he feels like he must tell you that his sister had an abortion, and he drove her to the clinic. What do you say to him? What do you say to him? Well, I hope what's coming to mind is what we've talked about. I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been really hard. Would you like to talk about it? Wow, I'm so grateful for your courage to come talk to me. I'm so sorry for your loss. And then just let the conversation go from there. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to fill in all of the blank space. It's just about starting the conversation and being a soft place to land, a safe place to uncover secrets that will destroy and are destroying men and women across the globe. Last scenario, another Students for Life. You guys do a great job with knocking on doors around abortion clinics. So you've been out all morning knocking on your doors. You're growing tired and are super hot. This is the last house on your list. You're praying no one answers, but someone does. You run through your script, and the 45-year-old woman who opened the door starts crying and says, "I aborted my baby when I was about your age. She would have been 25 this year." What do you say to her? Totally catches you off guard. And I hope what's coming to mind is, "I'm so sorry for your loss." It must be hard for you to hear after all these years, me talking about this. Is there anything I can do to support you? You know, you have your resources from Support After Abortion in your bag. You might also say, "I'm so sorry for your loss. We have some resources for you, and I really encourage you to contact them. They know what you're going through and you're not alone. There's hope for you. And I'm so glad you shared with me today." Not everyone is ready for help right then and there, and that's okay. But again, I want you to feel encouraged and empowered to start the conversation. We have got to shift the way that we've been talking about abortion, that the way that we've been encountering men and women who've had abortion. Many people are scared. But I want you to know that that fear is not founded. It's shaped by our culture and society. As a therapist, abortion has taken me to a whole nother understanding of what trauma is and how people in our world perceive trauma based on societal experiences. It's not taboo anymore. It was 30 years to say I'm divorced. It's not really taboo anymore to say I'm a teen parent, but it was 50 years ago. We have found a way to normalize and create awareness. In fact, teen parent rates are going down in like huge numbers. And that's what we believe is going to happen as we begin this conversation about abortion, as we begin to help generations understand that there's healing for them, there's hope. We're not going to judge them, that we want to give them confidential and anonymous support so that they can then find their next level of healing. I hope that this presentation was helpful for you today. And I want to end on this. We have the power to end the demand for abortion. We do. And it might not look like what it's always looked like. Think about that. It includes now, as a top priority, men and women who need help after abortion. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're interested in learning more, visit us at supportafterabortion.com. Thank you.